Welcome in, listeners. This is Margin Mavens, a podcast hosted by Steph and Kayla, where we share our thoughts on all things literature. Today's episode is about A Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins. It's a story of Cornelius Snow and his involvement with the 10th annual Hunger Games. The content for today's talk contains talk of child death, murder, abuse of power, and narcissism. Please take care of yourselves and only listen if such topics do not make you uncomfortable. Now make sure to grab a snack and a drink unless you're driving, then remember 10 and 2, and come hang out with us while we dive in. Frick Snow.
Yes. First of all, if you are a fan of Snow, you need to go to your shame box in your shame corner
And think about what you've done.
and think about your choices.
Yep.
I don't
understand.
I mean, I understand that it was romanticized
in the movie.
Yeah. But not in the book. This is why we are book first, movie second.
Yeah, I think throughout the entire novel, it's repeatedly clear
Yes.
that he is the villain of this story. I do not think that there are enough points in the column of like redemption, right? I think Suzanne Collins does a really great job of making it to where you can tell she doesn't want us to love Snow, right? Like it's not one of those things where with the like Star Wars movies, right? Going off on a tangent for a split second, but when we get told of the story of, Luke and all of that kind of thing, you're obviously like, oh yeah, frick Vader. Right? And then you get to the prequels and you find out about Vader's life. And then by the end, you're supposed to feel sympathy for him because he like went down the wrong path and whatever, and actually like does something to, whole thing. I think Suzanne does a really great job at not trying to make us feel bad for Snow.
Right.
And does a really good job of just kind of painting like, this is how he becomes who we know him as.
Yes.
But she was always
clear.
Yeah.
She makes it very clear because he has opportunity after opportunity after opportunity after opportunity to do the right thing, and he chooses
not to. Yeah.
What's best for him and what's best for the Capitol.
Yeah.
First over everything.
And ultimately, it becomes one of those, wouldn't be a prequel to the Hunger Games as we know it if he made any of the right choices. So obviously it's all very deliberate. I think his infatuation with Lucy Gray is once again very much romanticized in the movies because you get these two attractive actors, right? You're going to want to push that like forbidden romance aspect of it. But I think throughout the entire book, every single time he talks about Lucy Gray, he really is like enamored by the idea of owning her.
Yes.
And this is
not of her.
Yeah.
Like she is.
And she is such a like free spirit. We find out that her people are Covey. And so they've been in District 12 for years, but not out of wanting to be there, but because that is where they were before the peacekeepers and everything stopped letting them leave. Right. And he doesn't seem to have any regard for her in a romantic light until he starts hearing this phrase of like, that's your girl. Right?
Yeah.
But nobody in the Capitol and in the story are saying that to him at the beginning in like a romantic way. It's very much like you are her mentor. Like she belongs to you until
she's your responsibility.
This ends. Yeah. And he views it as like and it comes from the fact that he is hiding poverty at this point. Like he is very excited to own something shiny and new that the Capitol has an interest in because he doesn't have any of these possessions himself. Which, like,
it's really great messaging for like what's happening now, and even when she released the book a few years ago, of like we are caping and supporting and uplifting billionaires, even though they
They do not care.
do nothing for us.
Yeah.
They don't care about us. They do nothing for us. They want nothing to do with us. They just want more.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Snow is a really great picture of that because he just wants more. He thinks he has earned more. He thinks he deserves more because of his name and because of who his family is, which is like a perfect metaphor for right now.
Yeah, and I think, they have him and Tigress have this phrase of like snow lands on top, right? And first and foremost, Tigress made me so sad throughout this book because we know her fate. We know that at some point he is going to make a decision that leads her to be completely altered in physical appearance and kind of like kept in the outskirts. I loathe this man. He was such a like fun villain to read though, because any of the points where he thought that he was still points where you assumed because of the romantic feelings and stuff, like towards the end of the book when he and Lucy are getting ready to leave, they're in that cabin and then he finds the guns, right? It's so disturbingly interesting to see how quickly his priorities changed in that moment of, oh my god, I found the guns, I can clear my name and this will never come back to bite me in the butt in terms of his involvement in the murder and stuff like that. And he immediately is like, Lucy Gray, I love you, but I love the Capitol more, right? And what he feels for Lucy has never been love. It has been this person and I shared a traumatic situation, her more so because she was actually in the games. But he was going to be able to tell himself he was in love with her if he had no other options. Right. Like
was his last choice.
Yeah. And man, it just all the foreshadowing of what we will know to come in the Hunger Games was really cool.
How Katniss is just a plant that she goes and looks for, and then she disappears.
And then she disappears, and she was looking for Katniss, and then we know how that all plays out in the Hunger Games, which listeners, we have decided that we will be reading the Hunger Games.
Rereading Hunger Games. Yeah, kind of have to now.
Kind of have to.
I just finished
I need it.
Sunrise on the Reaping, so I kind of need to finish.
And it's the fact that he is there when they learn about the Mockingjays, right? And they learn about what these kind of... And it's the fact, like digging into the Mockingjays for a moment, right? It's the fact that one, he finds them like abhorrent. Like he hates these birds just because they had figured out a way to be self-sufficient away from the Jabberjays, which were capital birds. Right. And so their very existence pisses him off, which is why they become this symbol of the rebellion, because, they're able to be self-sufficient. But it's the fact that he already hates them. Right. We being the readers know his future. Right. And know how all of this is going to land. And the fact that we can kind of see why he hated them instinctively. And then almost kind of like laugh at him, knowing how it's going to turn out for him later on was really good. Talking about Sejanus.
I think it's Sejanus.
Yeah.
I meant to look it up.
I haven't watched the movie because I knew I was going to read the book. So
yeah.
He was such a sad story. Because what he felt like to me is a person living in Florida and you're like the one blue dot. Like he is
the antithesis of Snow.
Yeah.
Right? Because he starts off in the district and then his father sees great success during
The
the
war, because
war
he makes
and launches
ammo and
them.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, launches them to the capital, whereas Snow had seen great success, and then his father died
Dies.
and everything went downhill. So like they
Yeah.
have opposite journeys. And Stannis is just like this sweet boy that
Mm-hmm.
just wants to go home.
Yeah.
Like all he wants is to go home.
And it's the fact that he has all of this power and resources, and the entire time, like, man, like reading it from Snow's point of view really hurts.
Yeah.
Because you hear all of these moments of these people leaning on Snow, talking to him about their problems, talking to them about their feelings. And like the entire time he's listening to them, he's like, these people are stupid.
Yeah. He does not care.
He's like, these people think I care about them. And he is very, because it's, his mind, so he's not filtering anything, but he is very plain in the fact that he's like, how can I use this for my advantage later?
Yes.
And the fact that he was constantly worried that Sejanus was going to like win out over him, right? And in the end, he kind of does, because even though Sejanus is hung, or yeah, I couldn't remember if he was hung or if he had the firing squad. But even though he was hung, he still ends up winning out on top, because that is the whole reason Lucy ends up running away anyways.
Yes.
Is the fact that she pieces it together when he says that he's killed 3 people. And she's like, wait, I know.
Who's the third?
I
know of 2.
I know about the district tribute. I know about Maud. Who's the third? And then she has that moment of understanding that he may not have obviously been the one to hang Sejanus himself, but he had put the pieces in motion to have that done.
He was ultimately responsible for it.
Yes. And I think it's so interesting because that Snow, for as long as he believes Lucy is alive, is going to kind of fear that she could ever just like show up again and like explain his involvement and what was going on and stuff like that. But he
which
also
is why he wants to murder her.
Yeah, which is on the other side of things. It's also like, does he truly believe that she would be able to ruin him? Probably not, because he has that deep narcissistic thing, and he's ultimately, especially by the end of this book, when he has money again and status and everything, he is incredibly arrogant and has this like superiority complex to everyone.
Which he's now allowed to sort of like lean into, because before he wasn't able to, because he knew he was poor and he was working so hard to cover that up, that now he has money and status and he's like, nothing's stopping me now.
Yes.
Let me tell you the various ways I'm better. Yeah.
Sejanus's family ends up bringing him in as like an heir, because in their eyes, he was their son's best friend. And they had no other kids, and so they would need an heir. An heir, and so he starts getting the money from them. He obviously was working really well with the game maker, who she is all types of kooky crazy. And
is she though, or is she just?
Nah, I think she's crazy,
sociopathic. Like,
well, that could be what I meant by crazy. Like she. Well, because you can have a sociopath who doesn't feel the need to be close to people. They don't understand emotions and all of those things, right? But that doesn't inherently mean that they're going to
sadist.
Yeah, like, that doesn't inherently mean that they're going to like be violent or dangerous in the way that she is, in the fact that she's willing to do anything for the like science of it all.
She is very, very dangerous.
Yeah, I think this book went incredibly slow for me until the last like 100 pages. And I can see reading the book why the movie would romanticize it in the way that it did. because I think if it would have leaned a little out of from what I've seen, mind you, remember, haven't seen this movie, but from what I've seen on like TikTok or social media or people's opinions of it, I could understand why a movie director would choose to lean a little bit more into the romance side of it, because if you pluck out the romance or leave it how it is in the book, where it's not the end all be all of the plot, it can get incredibly slow and just like grating, because you're dealing with Snow's annoying inner monologue the entire time. And
it's just Lucy Gray
is so cool.
So cool, so fascinating.
She was so smart, and I like all of the headcanons that like she somehow like made it back to District 12.
Yes. And she waited until he left and then went back to District 12 somehow.
And obviously District 12 is gonna, you know, hold on to her and do all of these things and make sure. I love them. I love the idea that she was one of the like stall workers that we see in the Hunger Games movie that gives Katniss the Mockingjay pin.
The Mockingjay pin.
In my heart, that's how it is. I haven't read Sunrise on the Reaping yet. I would love to have known I would love to have more info as to what was really going on with Tigress, because it kind of gets hinted between her and Lucy Gray that they had to sell seemingly like sexual favors in order to make money or to make trades in the black market. And Tigress kind of alludes to this a couple times, but Snow, he has like one of his rare moments of self-awareness, and he's like, I never really stopped to think about what she would need to do to get some of the things that she's done in order to like take care of us. And I think I would have really enjoyed kind of just learning more about their downfall in terms of why aren't they as close anymore and what happened and stuff like that, because it's such an interesting idea to see that. But I mean, it can easily just come down to the very obvious. She's a lot less heartless than he is.
Yeah.
You know, like she was like, hey, the Hunger Games are really messed up.
Yeah. I think she gradually probably starts to realize that he is not as good as she thought he was.
Yeah. And
that he's willing to do anything.
Yeah.
To land on top.
And it becomes that like nature versus nurture thing, because they're dealing with the same circumstances. They have the same kind of. Well,
a little.
You're right, because he's a white man at the academy.
Yes.
Yes, you're right. Their circumstances are different.
Yes. So it makes sense why she would be the sweeter, gentler,
she's having to
one,
sacrifice more. Yeah.
Yes. And also because I firmly believe that she wants to put into the world what she would have wanted for herself.
Which is why she ends up like working
with what's his face, right?
Yeah, with the rebellion and stuff too. And you know, I think Snow lands on top is such an interesting motto for them, because we see this in the Hunger Games when Katniss comes around, is the whole kind of fight between like, okay, like Snow, and then like she's obviously the girl on fire, and like what's gonna win between fire and Snow, you know? I really enjoyed it. I think this book was really good. It gave us more answers and insight into Panem and what the Hunger Games kind of seemed like at the beginning, when it was still kind of being like tweaked, and the ideas
it was
behind
really
it.
Like the turning point for the Hunger Games itself was like the mentoring and the way that, you know, Snow starts. This is really like the beginning of Snow's like game maker career that leads to him becoming
the president of Panem. Yeah, because a lot of the things that we see in the Hunger Games as we know it are things that he kind of brought in as ideas, you know, of we need to have an incentive for people to
Yeah,
want
the
to
betting,
the betting. We need to have an incentive for
sponsorships.
them to want to be reaped, right? So
Yeah.
he's like, there needs to be more incentive for them to want to do well in these.
Mm-hmm.
And so he kind of creates this idea of like the victors' houses and the
Yes.
money that goes into
Yes.
like putting your name in it and you know, a lot
And
of these things that kind of
as somebody who read Sunrise on the Reaping recently and read Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes first, like I think it's imperative that you read Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes first to get the full effect. No spoilers, but to get
no
the full effect of
spoilers.
Sunrise on the Reaping.
Yeah. I definitely enjoyed it. I'll definitely be reading Sunrise on the Reaping because it's our episode a few weeks from now.
Yeah.
And then we'll probably do the Hunger Games at some point.
Yeah. Maybe season 3.
We have a season 3. By this point, we are the beginning of April. Season 2 will be ending sometime early June. So obviously, us being who we are, we're already, you know,
We're
a few
planning
months
ahead.
ahead to figure out what's going on and stuff like that. So that's super exciting. But I think we've hit all of the points we wanted to say.
Let us know what your thoughts are on Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. Did you only watch the movie? Did you read the book? Did you do both? What were your thoughts?
Which one did you prefer?
Which one did you prefer? What do you think
Um,
about Lucy Gray? What are your Lucy Gray headcanons?
yeah, I loved her. I loved all of the kills that she had in the arena being not
Subtle. They were very subtle.
they were subtle. I mean, it makes sense because women are more likely to do poison as opposed to
Yeah.
violence. In a lot of cases, like there's a lot of women serial killers and they usually choose, especially in the olden days, they chose, you know, rat poison and stuff like that. And so it was really cool to see kind of how she did that. She also how she like chooses the victims was really nice. She tried to choose those that were already like in some sort of trouble.
Right.
And unfortunately the young child was just happenstance of where she put the bottle.
Right.
But this has been our episode on A Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. If you haven't already followed us on all social medias, the links are down below. You should definitely do that because we're cool as heck. And we will see you guys in the next episode.